In just a couple of weeks, Disney will be releasing their 60th animated film, Encanto. So for the past couple of months, I've been watching all the past Disney animated films and ranking them by era. Today we've reached the final complete era, the post-Renaissance. Since the current era, the revival era, is still going. The post-Renaissance era is every movie from Dinosaur to Bolt, and so now I'm going to rank them from worst to best. Easily coming in at last place at number 12 is Chicken Little. This movie is all over the place. It has no coherent or consistent plot. The animation, even for 2005, is very ugly for Disney standards. This whole movie is just very mean. These adults are bullying and mocking this child because of a mistake he made like a year ago and harassing his family. The movie doesn't even know what it wants its own story to be. Is it about Chicken Little joining the baseball team? Is it about aliens? There are way too many plot lines to jump around way too quickly, and all the jokes are very mean. Jokes like, your hate mailbox is now full, and just harassing him and his dad. It's just very mean and cynical for a Disney movie, and the animation's very, very ugly. Number 11, Home on the Range. I'm also not a huge fan of this movie, but at least this movie has a story it's stuck with. Unfortunately, that story is completely stupid. Every character in this movie is unlikable and annoying, and just like Chicken Little, it's a lot more cynical than a Disney movie should be, and the villain is just so lame. Number 10, The Wild. It's still not a good movie, but it's more enjoyable than the previous ones on this list. Again, biggest problem, the animation is very cheap for a Disney movie. The story isn't anything new or creative. It's just a fusion of Finding Nemo and Madagascar. But the one thing about the movie that I found kind of enjoyable was William Shatner as the villain. Number 9, Fantasia 2000. I've never been a fan of either Fantasia movie. I appreciate them from a scholarly standpoint, but not as entertainment. There are some beautifully animated sequences in this, like the Nutcracker and Rhapsody in Blue, but then you have really random ones like Donald Duck and Story of Noah's Ark while Pomp and Circumstance is playing. Weird choice. It definitely looks higher quality than the original Fantasia, but I'm still not a fan of either one of them. Number 8, Dinosaur. The animation in this movie doesn't really hold up that well, but it came out 20 years ago, and at the time it looked amazing. This definitely is an experiment, since it was the first Disney movie to be CGI instead of 2D. The story's pretty decent, it's fun. Number 7, Bolt. This movie's just okay. The stakes in this movie are really not that high, there's no sense of urgency. It's cute, it's a good talking animal movie, but it's just not that exciting. And also, Miley Cyrus was miscast. I get why they cast her. She was the most popular star on Disney Channel at the time this came out. She was making them a lot of money. But to hear this, at the time, 16-year-old's voice coming out of a character who's supposed to be like 12 or 13 just does not fit. Still a cute movie. It's got some good jokes, but it feels like they were holding back quite a bit for making this movie truly great. Number 6, Atlantis. This has a great story, though a familiar one. It keeps you engaged. It's got good world building and mythology, but the tone can be a bit all over the place. Some parts are big and epic, like an Indiana Jones type movie, but then some of the dialogue and humor feels very dumbed down. They were trying to make a Disney movie that was more mature to appeal to older audiences, but also wanted toy sales from younger audiences, so they tried to find a balance, and it just didn't work. Number 5, Brother Bear. I consider this movie very underrated. It has an original story, it's got a lot of emotion, a great character arc, and 2 very funny comic relief characters. There are some issues with it. I think there are certain scenes where they didn't need to have Phil Collins singing about how you're supposed to feel, as opposed to just having score. That would have worked better. But it is still a very well done film. Number 4, Lilo and Stitch. This is one of my absolute favorites as a kid, and I still love it now. It's one part E.T., one part Men in Black, and has a lot of emotion and thought put into it. Number 3, Treasure Planet. Treasure Island set in space and done very well. The character designs are creative, the updates to the story are clever. It's a very exciting, very creative movie. Number 2, The Emperor's New Groove. Probably the most underrated Disney movie ever, and also the funniest. It's very different than a lot of Disney movies because the main character starts off so selfish and unlikable. The 2 villains are hilarious and are the best part of the movie. The writing is sharp, it's clever, it's random in a good way. If you haven't seen it yet, you're missing out. In fact, I like this movie so much, I was juggling about whether to put this one as number 1 or my number 1 pick as number 1, and after internally debating with myself for about half an hour, I finally decided that the one that came in number 1 comes in number 1 simply because it is more emotional as opposed to a comedy. And that number 1 movie is Meet the Robinsons. This movie is absolutely perfect. The futuristic aesthetic is awesome, has a great message, it's very creative, has a lot of great story twists, and like I said, it is super emotional. It has a lot more of an emotional punch than Emperor's New Groove, which is just a little bit more of a comedy, which is why that was just like barely the number 2 spot. But anyway, that is why the Meet the Robinsons comes in at number 1. So I hope you enjoyed. Come back in a couple of weeks when I'll be ranking all 60 animated Disney films. And let me know your ranking of the post-Renaissance era.